You're enchained by your own sorrow.
AgnethaFältskog fits the very image of a Scandinavian goddess, tall, blonde, and beautiful, with incredible vocals, which makes it really unexpected that love would be her greatest undoing. What do we mean by that? Let's find out while showing you some of her rare photos. On April 5, 1950, AgnethaFältskog was born in the Swedish city of Untold to parents Knut Ingvar Fogg and his wife Birgit Margra Johansson. Though Ingvar was nothing but an apartment store manager and his wife was nothing but a homemaker, he always had an interest in music and showbiz. For sure, the ship had sailed for him and his wife, and they would never have careers of their own in showbiz. But with the birth of his daughter, Ingvar smelled an opportunity, and so he decided to go all in. This early musical attention that Agnetha received from her parents paid off. She wrote her very first song titled Two Small Trolls at the mere age of 6. When she was 8, she began to take piano lessons. On top of that, she began to sing in her local church choir, further developing her voice. Soon enough, Ingvar's dream to succeed in show business became Agnetha's dream. At the age of 10, she formed her first music group with 2 of her friends, known as the Cammers. The group performed locally in minor venues. However, when they failed to take off, they disbanded. For Agnetha, this brought about intense satisfaction. She was inspired by stars like Aretha Franklin, Connie Francis, Marianne Faithfull, and Leslie Gore. She wanted the kind of careers they had. And so, at the age of 15, she made the brave decision to drop out of school to pursue her music. While working at a car firm to support herself, Agnetha met Bernd Anhart, who had a local band. Impressed by Agnetha's vocals, he invited her to work with him. This took the band to whole new levels of popularity. So much so that they attracted the attention of successful producers. One such producer was Carl Gard List, who had just retired from a successful career as a rock and roll star. After receiving a demo from the band, he was only interested in Agnetha, her voice, and her skill as a songwriter. This intimidated Agnetha, who had always used the band as a crutch for support. But going off on her own, she signed a recording contract with Kupo Records. This took her success to whole new heights. Under Kupo Records, Agnetha scored her first #1 record with her debut single, Jagar So Care, released in 1967. At the age of 17, she became a national sensation, selling 880,000 copies within a single year. Throughout the late 60s, Agnetha continued to thrive as a national pop star. She appeared on many TV shows and released many other hit songs. This went on for a while until she met the German songwriter and producer, Dir Zimmermann. Love blossomed between the two, making Agnetha take some decisions without thinking twice. Enamored by Zimmermann, Agnetha fell for his plan to move to Germany and become a major star there. Zimmermann convinced her she would be more appreciated in Germany, and by singing his songs, she would quickly find stardom. The two were soon engaged and proceeded to move out of Sweden. But while in Germany, Zimmermann's plan began to quickly unravel. What happened was that Agnetha could not get along at all with the German producers she met. In fact, they hated her style, calling her chosen material horrible. This was all Agnetha needed to hear to break Zimmermann's spell and come back to earth. Calling off the engagement, she returned home to Sweden to further her career there. Agnetha's interactions with Zimmermann were the first sign of a pattern that would recur at many different points in her life. Anytime she came close to ruining her career, there was a man at the root of it all. Back in Sweden, Agnetha met Björn Ulvaeus, a member of a popular folk band known as The Hoot and Nanny Singers. Since they were both musicians, they had met previously in 1968 and 1969. However, by the 70s, their relationship intensified. They became deeply involved with each other. In 1971, Agnetha and Björn got married. Their union was not just romantic, but musical as well. At the time, Agnetha was friends with the musicians Annie Fried Lingard and Benny Andersson, who Bjorn had worked with already. The four of them decided to get together to the early 80s. All of them were hits, selling multiple million records worldwide. The supergroup became a key part in forming the sound of a generation. In the early 80s, though ABBA began to lose steam, this puzzled outsiders. But to insiders, the source was clear. The relationship between Agnetha and Bjorn had turned sour. They were headed for a separation, and there was no clue if the band would survive. Agnetha and Bjorn broke up in 1980. Though the band endured for a time, they just couldn't make it work. Agnetha was so depressed by the separation that she simply had to get away from Bjorn to focus on her mental health. And so, between 1982 and 1983, ABBA split up. There was no official announcement. The band simply stopped performing, disappointing their millions of fans worldwide. Puzzled by this sudden split, the media made Agnetha the villain. This worsened her depression. First, Agnetha sought therapy to deal with the pain of the loss. This was a very grueling process that took several months. But then, coming out of it, Agnetha once again felt ready to tackle the world of music. Since she did not have a band to use as a crutch, things would be much more difficult. Even so, she felt she was ready. Between the early 80s to late 80s, she recorded no less than 4 albums.
I know it's very
While
hard
these
for you.
generally performed well nationally, they failed to take off internationally. She had always been a great artist, but she just could not recreate the magic of ABBA all by herself. For Agnetha, the joy of being a musician had faded. She realized she needed to take a step back to find herself and rediscover the roots of her happiness. Throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, Agnetha receded from the public eye completely. This began a very trying time in her life. Without music to keep her occupied, she was beset by various troubles. Most of them were romantic in nature. Agnetha fell back on hobbies like astrology, horseback riding, and yoga to help her deal with her personal troubles. However, these all came up short compared to the harsh reality of her life. This period of her life almost broke her. As a matter of fact, Agnetha got married in 1990 to a Swedish surgeon. Unable to make it work, they divorced 3 years later. Agnetha had never been able to deal with breakups well. However, things got worse when her mother committed self-termination a year later by jumping off the balcony of her apartment. Receiving this news, Agnetha fell into a deep depression. A depression made worse when her father died just a year later than her mother. Beset by all these tragedies, Agnetha's mental health was in a very shaky place. She had no musical career at the time to support her, making her very vulnerable. It was at this moment in time that Agnetha's association with Dutch forklift driver Gert Vander began. Given the difference in wealth and class between them, many wondered if this was true love, or if there was something more between them than met the eye. As it turned out, Vander was taking advantage of Agnetha's weakened mental state. In 1999, 2 years after they started dating, she tried to terminate their relationship. However, Vander did not agree and started to stalk her. Though she sought a restraining order against him, he continued to try his luck by following her around and waiting for her at her various homes. From the mid-2000s to the late 2000s, Agnetha was once more on the upswing. Putting all the tragedies of the 90s behind her, she returned to music. Though she did not return to the level of success that she had enjoyed in the 70s, she was finally doing what made her happy. This went on until in the early 2020s, the unthinkable happened. In 2021, ABBA reunited. All 4 original members announced a new album as their first studio album in 40 years. It took 4 years for all 10 tracks to be recorded. The album was released to much nostalgic fanfare, netting the group their first Grammy Award nominations. These days, Agnetha is doing much better mentally. As the youngest member of ABBA, she has many more years of a successful music career ahead of her. Sure, she still suffers from a fear of heights. a fear of open spaces, a fear of crowds and general performance anxiety. However, learning her lessons from the tragedies of the past, she is now well equipped to deal with these issues. AgnethaFältskog is still regarded by many to be a goddess. Nonetheless, it would be well if even her most ardent fans remembered that she was still human. Many will say she should have been wiser when it came to romance. However, it was through her loves and losses that she was able to come up with such wonderful music. In any case, she's in a better place now. If you enjoyed this video, there's a good chance you'll also enjoy the one showing on your screen right now. Click to enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one.